The gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Virginia City, Nevada, and Sarah Fletcher hit the ground hard, her hands scraping against the rough dirt as she shoved the child out of harm's way. It was April 1876, and the silver mining town was as dangerous as it was prosperous. But Sarah had never imagined she would throw herself between a runaway horse dragging a wagon and a little boy who had wandered into the street. She rolled to her side, pain shooting through her shoulder where the wagon wheel had clipped her, and looked up to see a tall cowboy in dusty chaps and a worn hat rushing toward her. "Madam, are you all right?" His voice was deep and concerned as he dropped to one knee beside her, his strong hands carefully checking her shoulder. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen." Sarah winced and tried to sit up, aware of the crowd gathering around them. She could feel the heat rising to her cheeks, not from the praise but from the attention. Her brown hair had come loose from its simple bun, hanging in tangles around her face, and she knew her plain gray dress was now covered in dust and dirt. "I am fine," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Is the boy safe?" "He is, thanks to you." The cowboy helped her to her feet with surprising gentleness for someone with such calloused hands. His eyes were a striking blue-gray, like storm clouds over the desert, and when he smiled at her, something in Sarah's chest tightened. "Name is Cole Sutherland. I work at the Silver Ridge Ranch just outside of town." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion arose from the crowd, and her sister Victoria swept through like a queen, gracing her subjects with her presence. Victoria Fletcher was everything Sarah was not. Tall where Sarah was average height, graceful where Sarah was practical, beautiful where Sarah was plain. Her golden hair caught the sunlight like spun silk, and her green eyes sparkled with the kind of natural allure that made men stumble over their words. Even her dress, a deep blue that matched the Nevada sky, seemed to fit her perfectly, emphasizing her figure in ways Sarah's simple garments never could. "Sarah, what on earth happened?" Victoria's voice carried just the right amount of concern mixed with reproach. "Mother will be beside herself." "Look at you, you are covered in filth." "She saved a child's life," Cole said, and Sarah noticed how his tone had cooled considerably. "Your sister is a hero." Victoria turned her full attention to Cole, and Sarah saw the exact moment when recognition dawned in his eyes. She had seen it happen 1,000 times before. Men would notice Sarah, perhaps even speak kindly to her, but the moment Victoria appeared, it was as if Sarah became invisible. Victoria's beauty was that powerful, that consuming. "How gallant of her," Victoria said, stepping closer to Cole and placing a delicate hand on his arm. "I am Victoria Fletcher, Sarah's sister. You must forgive her recklessness. She has always been impulsive, throwing herself into situations without thinking." "Saving a child is not reckless," Cole replied, but Sarah noticed he had not moved away from Victoria's touch. "It is courageous." Sarah brushed the dust from her skirts, trying to ignore the familiar ache in her chest. "I should get home," she said quietly. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Sutherland." She turned to leave, but Cole's voice stopped her. "Wait, Miss Fletcher, at least let me walk you home. You might be hurt worse than you think." "I will take her," Victoria interjected smoothly, "but perhaps you could call on us this evening." "Our father owns the general store on Main Street. I am sure he would want to thank you for your assistance." Cole hesitated, his gaze moving between the two sisters. For a moment, Sarah thought she saw something like confusion in his eyes, but then he nodded. "I would be honored." As they walked home, Victoria chattered about Cole's handsome features and strong build, already planning what dress she would wear that evening. Sarah said nothing, focusing instead on putting one foot in front of the other despite the throbbing in her shoulder. This was how it had always been. This was how it would always be. Their house sat above the general store, a modest but comfortable dwelling that their father, Thomas Fletcher, had built with his own hands when he first came to Virginia City in 1862, hoping to strike it rich in the silver mines. He had not found silver, but he had found something more valuable, a stable business serving the miners and their families. Their mother, Margaret, had died 3 years ago from pneumonia, leaving Thomas to raise his 2 daughters alone. "Father," Victoria called as they entered through the back door, "you will never believe what happened." Sarah threw herself in front of a wagon, and the most handsome cowboy came to her rescue. Thomas Fletcher looked up from the ledger he was reviewing, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Sarah, are you hurt?" He stood quickly, his chair scraping against the wooden floor. "I am fine, Father, just bruised." Sarah managed a smile for him. He was a good man, her father, even if he sometimes failed to see how differently he treated his daughters. Victoria was his golden child, the one who reminded him of his late wife in her prime. Sarah took after his side of the family, with her plain features and sturdy build. "She saved a little boy," Victoria continued, examining her reflection in the mirror that hung near the door. "And now the cowboy is coming to call this evening. His name is Cole Sutherland, and he works at the Silver Ridge Ranch." "Sutherland," Thomas mused. "I know that name. His family owns the ranch, one of the biggest cattle operations in the territory. Good people, from what I hear." "The boy is coming to call on you, Sarah. On both of us," Sarah said quickly, not wanting to see the hope in her father's eyes. "To thank me for what I did." "On me," Victoria corrected with a light laugh. "Oh, Sarah, you cannot possibly think a man like that would be interested in you." "He was just being polite, but when he saw me I could tell he was smitten. Men always are." Thomas frowned slightly. "Victoria, that is unkind." "It is simply the truth, Father. You know as well as I do that Sarah is not the type of girl men court. She is too practical, too plain." "But that is not a bad thing," Victoria added hastily, seeing Sarah's expression. "You will make someone a very good wife someday, perhaps a shopkeeper or a clerk, someone sensible." Sarah excused herself and climbed the stairs to the small room she had once shared with Victoria before her sister had claimed the larger room as her own. She removed her ruined dress and washed the dirt from her hands and face in the basin on her dresser. The mirror above it showed her exactly what she already knew. Brown eyes that were neither particularly large nor particularly expressive, a nose that was slightly too prominent, lips that were too thin, and a figure that was neither fashionably slender nor pleasingly curved. She was plain, just as Victoria said. Just as everyone said, even if they were too polite to say it to her face. But when Cole Sutherland had looked at her in that moment after she saved the child, before Victoria had appeared, Sarah could have sworn she saw something more than pity or politeness in his eyes. She had seen admiration, perhaps even interest. She was foolish to hope, she told herself as she changed into her only other decent dress, a simple brown calico that did nothing for her complexion. Victoria would turn on her considerable charm this evening, and Cole would fall under her spell like every other man who crossed their path. By tomorrow, he would be courting Victoria in earnest, and Sarah would fade back into the background where she belonged. The evening came too quickly. Sarah helped her father prepare a simple supper while Victoria spent hours getting ready, emerging finally in a dress of emerald green that made her eyes luminous. She had pinned her golden hair into an elaborate style that must have taken an hour to perfect, and she had added a touch of rouge to her lips and cheeks. "Do I look beautiful?" Victoria asked, twirling in front of their father. "You always look beautiful, Victoria," Thomas said warmly. Then, Noticing Sarah setting the table in her plain brown dress, he added, "You look very nice too, Sarah." The knock came at 7 o'clock precisely. Thomas opened the door to reveal Cole Sutherland, cleaned up and wearing his Sunday best. He had shaved and slicked back his dark hair, and he carried a small bouquet of wildflowers that he must have picked on his way into town. "Mr. Fletcher," Cole said, extending his hand. "Thank you for allowing me to call." Come in, Thomas ushered him inside. "We are grateful for your help this afternoon." Cole stepped into the parlor and his eyes immediately found Sarah. To her surprise, he crossed directly to her, offering the wildflowers. "For you, Miss Fletcher." "I thought about bringing something fancier from the florist, but these reminded me of you. Strong and beautiful in their own way, growing where others might not think to look." Sarah took the flowers with trembling hands, too stunned to speak. Behind Cole, she saw Victoria's smile freeze on her face. "How thoughtful," Victoria said, recovering quickly. She glided forward, placing herself between Cole and Sarah. "Wildflowers are so charming in their simplicity. Do you ride often, Mr. Sutherland?" "I adore riding, though I so rarely find anyone skilled enough to keep up with me." Cole took a polite step back from Victoria's proximity. "I ride every day, Miss Victoria. It is part of ranch work. Do you ride as well, Miss Sarah?" "I do," Sarah said, finding her voice at last. "Though not for pleasure usually. I help Father with deliveries sometimes." "Practical riding," Victoria interjected with a light laugh. "Not like real riding. I have a mare, Duchess, who is as spirited as she is beautiful. Perhaps you could join me for a ride sometime, Mr. Sutherland." "Perhaps," Cole said noncommittally. He turned back to Sarah. "How is your shoulder? I have been worried about it all afternoon. It is just bruised, nothing serious." "She has always been sturdy," Victoria said. "Built for work, our Sarah. Not delicate like some women, but then, different qualities suit different people." Thomas cleared his throat. "Shall we eat?" Sarah prepared a wonderful stew. Over supper, Victoria dominated the conversation, telling elaborate stories about her various admirers and accomplishments. She spoke of the time she sang at the church social and received a standing ovation, of how she had once nursed a baby bird back to health, of her skill with embroidery and watercolors. Each story was designed to showcase her sensitivity, her talent, her desirability. Cole listened politely, but Sarah noticed his attention kept drifting back to her. Several times their eyes met across the table, and each time, Sarah felt that same strange tightening in her chest. "What about you, Miss Sarah?" Cole asked during a rare pause in Victoria's monologue. "What do you do with your time?" "I help Father in the store," Sarah said simply. "I keep the books, manage inventory, serve customers, and I read when I can find the time." "What do you read?" "Whatever I can get my hands on. Novels mostly, poetry sometimes." "Sarah has her nose in a book constantly," Victoria said with a dismissive wave. "I keep telling her she should focus more on her appearance and less on filling her head with stories, but she never listens." "I think reading is admirable," Cole said, his voice taking on an edge. "An educated woman is a treasure." Victoria's smile tightened. "Of course. I read too, naturally. All the most fashionable novels, though I find real life far more interesting than anything in a book." After supper, Victoria suggested they sit on the porch to enjoy the evening air. She positioned herself next to Cole on the bench, leaving Sarah to take the rocking chair across from them. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Mr. Sutherland," Victoria said, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "Tell me about your ranch. It must be terribly exciting running such a large operation." "My father runs it," Cole corrected. "I just work there like any other ranch hand, though I am learning the business, hoping to take over someday." "A man of ambition," Victoria purred. "I admire that." "A woman wants a man who can provide for her, who can give her the life she deserves." Cole shifted uncomfortably. "I suppose that is true for some women. Others might value different things." "Such as?" Victoria leaned closer. "Kindness, courage, substance." Cole looked directly at Sarah. "This afternoon, when your sister threw herself in front of that wagon, she did not think about her dress or her hair or what people would think. She just acted because it was the right thing to do. That takes real character." Victoria's expression hardened for just a moment before she recovered. "Yes, Sarah is very impulsive. I worry about her sometimes, acting without thinking things through." "It was not impulsive," Cole said firmly. "It was brave." An awkward silence fell. Thomas, sensing the tension, stood up. "Victoria, why don't you help me with the dishes? Let Sarah and Cole talk. After all, he did come here to check on her welfare." Victoria looked as if she might protest, but their father's tone brooked no argument. She rose gracefully, shooting Sarah a look that promised this conversation was far from over, and followed Thomas inside. Alone with Cole, Sarah felt suddenly shy. The evening had taken a turn she had not expected, and she did not know what to make of it. "Your sister is very beautiful," Sarah said quietly, giving him an opening to agree, to admit he was interested in Victoria like everyone else. "Yes, she is," Cole agreed, and Sarah felt her heart sink. But then he continued, "Beautiful like a painting in a museum, pretty to look at, but you would not want to take it home. It would not fit in a real life." Sarah looked up, startled. "That is a strange thing to say." "Is it?" Cole moved to sit on the porch railing in front of her, closer than propriety might dictate. "I have known women like your sister, Miss Sarah. Women who know their beauty gives them power and they wield it like a weapon. Everything is calculated, designed to attract and ensnare. But you are different. Plain, you mean?" "No." His voice was sharp, almost angry. "Not plain, real. When I look at you, I see someone genuine. Someone who does what is right because it is right, not because it will make her look good. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Sarah's throat felt tight. "You do not know me, Mr. Sutherland. We only just met." "Then let me get to know you." He reached out and gently took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm and solid. "Would you allow me to call on you again? Not your sister, not your family. You." "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. Cole smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Because when I close my eyes, it is not your sister's face I see. It is yours. It is the way you looked lying in the dirt, already trying to get up to check on that child. It is the way you listened at dinner, really listened, instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. It is the way you are looking at me right now, like you cannot believe anyone would choose you over Victoria." "I cannot," Sarah admitted. "Then I will just have to prove it to you." The door opened, and Victoria emerged, having clearly been watching through the window. "It is getting late," she announced. "Surely you must be getting back to your ranch, Mr. Sutherland." Cole stood, still holding Sarah's hand. He raised it to his lips and kissed her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you for a wonderful evening, Miss Sarah. May I call on you again tomorrow?" "Yes," Sarah breathed, unable to believe this was happening. "I am afraid tomorrow will not work," Victoria interjected. "We have so many obligations. The week is entirely full, is it not, Sarah?" "Actually, tomorrow is Sunday," Sarah said, finding a spark of courage she did not know she possessed. "We will be at church in the morning, but the afternoon is free. Then I will see you in the afternoon." Cole released her hand reluctantly and tipped his hat. "Good evening, ladies, Mr. Fletcher." After Cole left, Victoria whirled on Sarah. "What do you think you are doing?" "I do not know what you mean." "Do not play innocent with me. You know he came here because of me." You saw how he looked at me at supper. He looked at you the way anyone would look at someone who would not stop talking, Sarah retorted, surprising herself with her boldness. He brought me flowers, Victoria. He asked to call on me. Because he feels sorry for you. Because you threw yourself at him, quite literally, this afternoon. But I assure you the novelty will wear off. Men like Cole Sutherland do not end up with women like you. They end up with women like me. Maybe this one will be different. Victoria stepped closer, and for the first time, Sarah saw real anger in her sister's beautiful eyes. Listen to me carefully, Sarah. I have let you have your little moment of glory, but this ends now. Cole Sutherland is exactly the kind of man I have been waiting for. Rich, handsome, from a good family. I will not let you ruin this for me with your pathetic attempt at being interesting. It is not up to you, Sarah said, her voice shaking but determined. If Cole wants to court me, that is his choice. Then I will make him choose differently. Victoria smiled, and it was not a kind smile. You have no idea what I am capable of, sister. By this time next week, Cole will not even remember your name. Sarah wanted to believe her sister was wrong, wanted to cling to the hope that Cole's interest was genuine. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, doubt crept in. Victoria had never failed to get what she wanted. Why would this time be any different? Morning came bright and clear. Sarah put on her Sunday dress, a dark blue that was several years old but still respectable, and helped her father open the store for the early morning customers who needed supplies before church. Victoria came down wearing a dress of pale pink that made her look like a porcelain doll. Church was held in a simple wooden building at the edge of town. The pastor, Reverend Mills, was a kind man in his 60s who had known Sarah since she was a child. The congregation was a mix of miners, ranchers, shopkeepers, and their families, all dressed in their best clothes. Sarah was surprised and flustered when Cole appeared just before the service began, sliding into the pew beside her. He was clean-shaven again, wearing a suit that looked new, and he smelled of soap and leather. "Good morning," he whispered, his shoulder pressing against hers in the crowded pew. "Good morning," Sarah whispered back, acutely aware of Victoria on her other side, radiating disapproval. Throughout the service, Sarah could barely focus on Reverend Mills's sermon. She was too conscious of Cole's presence, of the way he shared his hymnal with her, of how his voice blended with hers as they sang. When they stood for the final prayer, his hand brushed against hers, and Sarah felt electricity shoot up her arm. After the service, the congregation gathered outside to socialize. Cole stayed close to Sarah, but Victoria was not about to be ignored. She inserted herself into every conversation, laughing at things that were not funny, touching Cole's arm at every opportunity, generally making herself the center of attention. "Miss Victoria, you have a lovely singing voice," Cole said politely when she mentioned performing at the next social. "Do you think so?" Victoria beamed. "I have been told I could perform professionally if I wanted to. Of course, a lady does not do such things, but it is nice to be appreciated. Do you sing, Mr. Sutherland? Not well. I could teach you if you like. We could spend some time together, just the two of us." Victoria's implication was clear. Cole's jaw tightened. "That is kind, but I am tone deaf. No amount of teaching would help. Besides, I am more interested in talking than singing." "About what?" Victoria asked coyly. "Books, actually. Miss Sarah mentioned she enjoys reading. I thought perhaps I could borrow some recommendations from her." Victoria's smile became strained. "Sarah reads such dull things. Let me recommend something more exciting." Before Cole could respond, a commotion arose near the church. A group of men were arguing, their voices rising. Sarah recognized them as miners from the Consolidated Virginia mine, one of the richest silver strikes in the area. "The company is cheating us," one man shouted. "We risk our lives every day for pennies while they get rich." "Calm down, Jensen," another man said. "This is not the time or place." "When is the time?" "When another man dies in a collapse, when our families starve." The crowd grew agitated. Cole immediately moved to position himself between Sarah and the arguing men, his hand going protectively to her elbow. Victoria, seeing an opportunity, pretended to stumble against Cole's other side. "Oh, I feel faint," she said dramatically. "The heat and all this shouting." "Let me get you some water," Sarah offered, but Victoria clung to Cole's arm. "No, I need to sit down." "Mr. Sutherland, would you help me to the carriage?" Cole looked torn. The situation with the miners was escalating, and he clearly did not want to leave Sarah in a potentially dangerous situation. "Miss Sarah, come with us." "I should check if anyone needs help," Sarah said. She could see several women with small children looking frightened. "Sarah, always trying to be a hero," Victoria said with false sweetness. "Let the men handle it." But Sarah was already moving toward Mrs. Chen, a Chinese woman whose husband worked in the mines. She had 2 small children with her, and she looked terrified. Most of the white congregation avoided the Chinese families, but Sarah had never understood such prejudice. "Mrs. Chen, take the children to our store," Sarah said quietly. "You will be safe there until this is resolved." Mrs. Chen nodded gratefully, and Sarah helped her usher the children away from the crowd. By the time she returned, Cole had extricated himself from Victoria and was helping Reverend Mills calm the miners. "Your jobs will still be there tomorrow," the Reverend was saying. "Fighting on the Sabbath will not solve anything. Go home to your families, rest, approach the company with clear heads on Monday." Grudgingly, the men dispersed. Cole returned to Sarah's side immediately. "That was foolish," he said, but his tone was gentle. "You could have been hurt." Mrs. Chen needed help. Most people in this town would not have noticed or cared. Cole studied her face. "You really do not see it, do you? See what? How special you are." Before Sarah could respond, Victoria reappeared, her mysterious faintness apparently cured. "Well, that was unpleasant. Shall we go home? I am sure Mr. Sutherland has better things to do than babysit us." "Actually," Cole said, "I was hoping to take Miss Sarah for that ride I mentioned. If your father approves, of course." Victoria's eyes flashed. "Sarah does not ride well. She would not be able to keep up with you." "I am not planning a race, Miss Victoria, just a leisurely ride so we can talk." Cole turned to Thomas, who had been watching the entire exchange with interest. "Mr. Fletcher, would you permit me to take Sarah riding this afternoon? I promise to have her back before dark and to keep everything proper." Thomas looked at Sarah, really looked at her, perhaps seeing for the first time that his plain daughter had caught the eye of an eligible man. "If Sarah wants to go, she has my permission." "I do," Sarah said quickly, before Victoria could invent another objection. They arranged to meet at the edge of town after lunch. Sarah rushed home and changed into her riding clothes, a simple split skirt and blouse that were practical rather than fashionable. Victoria followed her into her room. "You are making a fool of yourself," Victoria said coldly. "And worse, you are making a fool of me. Everyone saw him ask you instead of me. Do you know how humiliating that is?" "I am sorry you are hurt," Sarah said carefully, "but I did not encourage him. He chose on his own." "Because you are playing the victim, the poor plain sister who needs rescuing. But trust me, Sarah, once he realizes how boring you are, how ordinary, he will lose interest. And when he does, I will be waiting. And I will never let you forget that you were just a passing fancy." Sarah did not respond. She had no defense against Victoria's cruelty because part of her feared her sister was right. How long could Cole's interest really last once he got to know her? What did she have to offer someone like him? But when she met Cole at the edge of town and saw his face light up at the sight of her, some of her doubts faded. He had brought 2 horses, a sturdy bay for himself and a gentle chestnut mare for her. "This is Clementine," Cole said, stroking the mare's neck. "She is sweet-tempered and easy-going, like someone else I know." "Are you calling me a horse?" Sarah asked with a smile. Cole laughed, and it was a rich, genuine sound. "I am calling you sweet-tempered and easy-going, though I suspect you have more fire in you than you let people see." He helped her mount, his hand steady on her waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Then he swung up onto his own horse with practiced ease, and they set out toward the hills beyond town. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, letting the horses set an easy pace. The Nevada landscape was harsh and beautiful, all red rock and scrub brush and endless sky. In the distance, the mountains rose like ancient sentinels, their peaks still dusted with snow despite the warming spring weather. "It is beautiful out here," Sarah said. "It is," Cole agreed. "Unforgiving, but beautiful. You have to be tough to survive, but there is a freedom here you cannot find anywhere else." "Is that why your family came west?" "My father wanted to build something of his own. He grew up poor in Missouri, working on other people's farms. When he heard about the opportunities in Nevada, he sold everything he owned and came out here in 1858. Bought land cheap, started with just a few head of cattle and built the ranch from nothing. Now it is one of the most successful in the territory. You must be proud of him." "I am." "He is a hard man, demanding but fair. He taught me that anything worth having is worth working for." Cole glanced at her. "What about your family? How did you end up in Virginia City?" Sarah told him about her father's dreams of striking silver, about how he had instead found success in the general store, about her mother's death. She found herself talking more than she usually did, surprised by how easy it was to confide in Cole. "And your sister?" Cole asked. "You two seem very different. Victoria takes after our mother. Everyone always said she was the beautiful one. I take after father. Practical. There is nothing wrong with practical. Beautiful fades, but character lasts." Cole pulled his horse to a stop near a small creek. "Can we rest here for a bit?" They dismounted and let the horses drink. Cole spread his coat on the ground for Sarah to sit on, then settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I want to be honest with you," Cole said after a moment. "I know your sister has set her cap for me. She has made that very clear, and I will not lie and say she is not beautiful because she is. But Sarah, there is something you need to understand. Beauty without substance is just an empty shell. Your sister talks and talks, but she never says anything real. Everything is calculated to impress, to manipulate. She does not see people, she sees opportunities." "You figured that out quickly," Sarah said quietly. "I have known women like her before. My brother James, he married a woman like that 3 years ago. Beautiful, charming, but cold inside. She made his life miserable until she ran off with a traveling salesman 6 months later. James is still recovering from the heartbreak, not because he loved her, but because he feels like such a fool for falling for her act. I am sorry. Do not be. It taught me a valuable lesson. When I look at you, I see something real. I see someone who helps Chinese families when others turn away. Someone who throws herself in front of a wagon to save a child. Someone who reads books and thinks about things and has her own mind. That is the kind of woman I want to know. That is the kind of woman I could fall in love with." Sarah's breath caught. "You barely know me. Then let me know you better." Cole turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I am not good with words, Sarah. I am a rancher, not a poet, but I know what I feel when I look at you. I know that I have thought about nothing but you since yesterday. I know that when I imagine my future, you are in it." Cole, I am not like Victoria. I cannot be charming or witty. I do not know how to flirt or play games. If you are expecting me to transform into something I am not, I am expecting you to be exactly who you are. That is all I want." He leaned closer, and Sarah's heart began to pound. She had never been kissed before, had never expected to be, certainly not by someone like Cole Sutherland. But when his lips met hers, gentle and questioning, she felt something inside her break open like spring after a long winter. The kiss was brief and chaste, but it felt like a promise. When Cole pulled back, he was smiling. "I should get you home," he said softly, "before your father sends out a search party. But Sarah, I want to court you properly. I want to take you to dinner, to the theater when the traveling shows come through, to dances. I want everyone in Virginia City to know that I am courting Sarah Fletcher, and that I am the luckiest man alive." They rode back to town as the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. When they reached Sarah's house, Victoria was waiting on the porch, her expression stormy. "You have been gone for hours," Victoria said accusingly. "Father has been worried." "Father has been in the store the entire time, perfectly content," Sarah replied, emboldened by the afternoon with Cole. "And Cole promised to have me back before dark. The sun is still up." Cole helped Sarah dismount, his hands lingering on her waist again. "Thank you for a wonderful afternoon, Sarah. May I see you again tomorrow? I would like that." Victoria made a sound of disgust and swept inside. Cole waited until she was gone, then quickly kissed Sarah's cheek. "Do not let her get to you," he murmured. "She is jealous. She is beautiful. She has never had reason to be jealous before. Then maybe it is time she learned she cannot have everything she wants." Cole mounted his horse. "Good night, Sarah. Dream of me." "I will," Sarah promised, and she knew it was true. Over the next few weeks, Cole courted Sarah with a steadiness and sincerity that made her head spin. He came to town every day, sometimes in the morning to have breakfast with her family, sometimes in the afternoon to help in the store, always in the evening to sit with her on the porch and talk. They talked about everything: books and philosophy, politics and religion, dreams and fears. Cole told her about his hopes for the ranch, how he wanted to implement new breeding techniques he had read about, how he dreamed of raising not just cattle but horses as well. Sarah told him about her love of reading, her secret dream of maybe one day writing stories of her own, her fear that she would never be more than a shopkeeper's daughter. "You could be anything you want," Cole insisted. "You are smart and capable. If you want to write, then write. Women do not do such things. Some women do. And even if they did not, why should that stop you? The world is changing, Sarah. Women are going to college now, becoming doctors and lawyers. Why not writers?" His faith in her was intoxicating. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt seen, truly seen, not as the plain sister or the practical daughter, but as herself. Cole valued her opinions, laughed at her small jokes, listened when she talked. With him, she felt beautiful, but Victoria did not give up easily. She launched a campaign to undermine Sarah at every turn, always sweetly, always with plausible deniability. "Cole, darling," Victoria would say, inserting herself into their conversations. "Sarah neglected to mention she cannot cook. Our father has to hire women to prepare proper meals. I suppose she has other qualities, though I struggle to think what they might be. Or, did Sarah tell you about the time she fell in the creek and had to be rescued by a boy half her age? She has always been so clumsy." Or, "I worry about Sarah sometimes. She lives so much in her books that she has no practical skills. What kind of wife would she make for a rancher? She would not last a week." Cole bore these attacks with patience at first, simply changing the subject or defending Sarah. But as the days passed and Victoria's campaign intensified, his patience wore thin. It came to a head one evening about 3 weeks after Cole had started courting Sarah. The family had gathered for supper, and Cole had brought a small gift for Sarah, a book of poetry by Emily Dickinson that he had ordered special from San Francisco. Poetry, Victoria sniffed. How impractical. Sarah, you already spend too much time reading. You should be learning useful skills. Reading is useful, Cole said sharply. It expands the mind and enriches the soul. For men, perhaps. But a woman needs to know how to run a household, how to entertain, how to make her husband proud. Sarah, bless her heart, knows none of these things. She would embarrass you in front of your friends and family. That is enough, Cole said, his voice hard as stone. I have been patient with you, Victoria, because you are Sarah's sister, but I will not sit here and listen to you belittle the woman I love. The room went silent. Even Victoria seemed shocked into speechlessness. Sarah's heart stopped beating. You love her, Victoria finally managed, her voice shaking. You love Sarah. Yes, Cole said firmly. He turned to Sarah, taking her hand. I love you. I have been waiting for the right moment to tell you, but I cannot wait any more. I love you, Sarah Fletcher. Not for what you look like or what skills you have, but for who you are. For your kindness and your courage and your beautiful heart. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I love you too, she whispered, hardly believing she was saying the words. Cole smiled and kissed her hand. Then he turned back to Victoria and his expression hardened. As for you, Victoria, I have tried to be civil because you are Sarah's sister, but your behavior has been despicable. You have tried to undermine Sarah at every turn, to make her feel small and unworthy, all because you cannot stand that I chose her over you. Let me be crystal clear. I will never choose you. I do not care how beautiful you are. Beauty means nothing when the heart inside is ugly. Victoria's face went white, then red. How dare you, she hissed. You self-righteous fool. You think you are so noble choosing the plain sister, but this is just your pride talking. You want to prove you are different from other men, that you can see beyond beauty. But eventually, you will wake up and realize what you have given up. You will look at her and see what everyone else sees, a plain, boring woman who could never satisfy a man like you. Get out, Thomas Fletcher said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He had been silent throughout the exchange, but now his face was hard with anger. Victoria, go to your room. I will not have you speak to a guest in my home that way, and I will not have you treat your sister with such cruelty. Father, surely you cannot take her side. Look at her. She is nothing. She is my daughter, and she is worth 10 of you right now. Go to your room before I say something I will regret. Victoria stared at her father in disbelief, then burst into tears and fled upstairs. The sound of her door slamming echoed through the house. Thomas turned to Cole and Sarah. I apologize for my daughter's behavior. I fear I have spoiled her. Let her beauty excuse too many faults. It ends now. You have nothing to apologize for, sir, Cole said, but I think it is time I made my intentions clear. Mr. Fletcher, I love your daughter. I want to marry her if she will have me and if you will give your blessing. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. They had been courting less than a month. This was too fast, too sudden. But when she looked into Cole's eyes, she saw no doubt, only certainty. Sarah, Thomas asked gently. What do you say? I say yes, Sarah breathed. Yes, I will marry you, Cole Sutherland. Cole pulled her into his arms, right there in front of her father, and kissed her properly for the first time since that afternoon by the creek. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and grinning. I will do this right, Cole promised. We will have a proper engagement, a nice wedding. I want to give you everything you deserve. They set the date for 2 months away in early July. It would give them time to plan and for Cole to prepare a place for them at the ranch. His father, William Sutherland, came to town the next week to meet Sarah and gave his wholehearted approval. "She has a good head on her shoulders," William told Cole where Sarah could hear. "That is worth more than a pretty face. You chose well, son." The announcement of the engagement set Virginia City buzzing with gossip. No one could quite believe it. Cole Sutherland, one of the most eligible bachelors in the territory, had chosen plain Sarah Fletcher over her beautiful sister. The story of how he had met Sarah, how she had saved the child, spread and grew in the telling until Sarah was practically a legend. Some people were kind, genuinely happy for Sarah. Others were skeptical, convinced that Cole must be after her father's money or that Sarah must have trapped him somehow. And a few, the cruel ones, made jokes about how desperate a man must be to choose the plain sister. Victoria heard all the gossip, and it fed her rage and humiliation. She stopped speaking to Sarah entirely, refusing to even acknowledge her presence. Thomas tried to mediate, but Victoria was beyond reason. "I will never forgive you," Victoria told Sarah one night when they happened to pass in the hallway. "You have taken everything from me. The one man I actually wanted, and you stole him with your pathetic victim act." "I did not steal anyone," Sarah replied wearily. "Cole made his own choice. Because you manipulated him. You made him feel sorry for you, but he will regret it. I will make sure of it." Sarah tried to ignore Victoria's threats, focusing instead on preparing for her wedding and her new life. Cole took her out to the ranch to meet his family and see where she would be living. The Silver Ridge Ranch was sprawling and prosperous, with a large main house, several barns, and hundreds of acres of grazing land. Cole's father, William, was a tall, lean man in his 50s with weathered skin and sharp eyes. His mother had died when Cole was young, and he had raised Cole and his brother James alone. James, now 28 to Cole's 25, was friendly but guarded. Sarah could see the hurt in his eyes when he looked at her, could tell he was remembering his own failed marriage. "I hope you will be happy here," James said stiffly. "My brother is a good man, better than me." "I am sure that is not true," Sarah said gently. "It is. I let myself be fooled by a beautiful face. Cole is smarter than that." Cole showed Sarah the house he was building for them, a modest but sturdy structure about a quarter-mile from the main ranch house. It would give them privacy while still keeping them close to family. "It is not fancy," Cole warned, "but it is solid. I am building it myself, with help from some of the ranch hands. Every nail, every board, I want to know I put it there with my own hands, building a home for us." Sarah ran her hand along the wooden frame, imagining their life here. "It is perfect." The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Sarah sewed her wedding dress with help from Mrs. Chen and some of the other women in town who had befriended her. It was simple, cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, nothing fancy, but it made Sarah feel beautiful. Victoria refused to participate in any of the preparations. She stayed in her room most of the time, coming out only for meals, during which she maintained an icy silence. Thomas tried to reason with her, but she would not budge. "I will not watch her marry the man who should have been mine," Victoria said flatly. "Do not ask me to pretend to be happy." "He was never yours," Thomas replied. "And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can move on with your life." But Victoria had no intention of moving on. 2 weeks before the wedding, she made her move. Cole had come into town for supper as usual. After the meal, he and Sarah went for their customary walk, strolling through the quiet streets as the sun set. They talked about their future, about the children they hoped to have, about growing old together on the ranch. "I cannot wait to make you my wife," Cole murmured, pulling Sarah into a shadowed alley to steal a kiss. "These last 2 months have been the happiest of my life." "Mine too," Sarah said, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady thump of his heartbeat. They did not see Victoria watching from across the street, or notice when she hurried away with a calculating look in her eyes. The next day, Sarah was working in the store when Victoria appeared, dressed in her finest gown and looking like an angel. She waited until there were several customers present, women who Sarah knew were terrible gossips. "Sarah, darling," Victoria said loudly, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I have been thinking about your wedding and I have decided that I should attend after all. You are my sister, and despite our differences, I want to support you." Sarah was immediately suspicious. Victoria never did anything without an ulterior motive. "That is kind of you, Victoria. I have also been thinking about Cole. He is such a wonderful man, so noble and kind. It is no wonder he fell for your story." "My story?" Sarah's stomach clenched. "Yes, you know. The way you threw yourself in front of that wagon to get his attention. The way you played the wounded bird so he would feel obligated to check on you. It was really quite clever." The women in the store gasped. Sarah felt her face burn. "That is not what happened, and you know it." "Oh, Sarah, there is no need to be embarrassed. We all know you have always been desperate for male attention. Remember when you threw yourself at the Miller boy when we were teenagers, and the way you used to follow the mining foreman around until father made you stop. You have always been so pathetically eager for any man to notice you." "That is a lie." Sarah's voice shook with fury and humiliation. "I never did any of those things." "Did not you?" Victoria's eyes glittered with malice. "Well, perhaps I am misremembering. But it does make one wonder, does not it, ladies? Why would a man like Cole Sutherland choose someone like Sarah unless she had manipulated him somehow? I mean, really, look at her. She is plain and dull. What could she possibly offer him?" One of the women, Mrs. Brennan, frowned. "That is a terrible thing to say about your own sister." "I am just being realistic," Victoria said with a delicate shrug. "I love Sarah, of course, but I would be a poor sister if I did not worry about her, and I worry about Cole too. He is such a good man. He deserves someone who truly loves him, not someone who is just grateful for the attention." Sarah could not speak, could barely breathe. The other women were looking at her with speculation now, doubt creeping into their expressions. Was it possible? They seemed to be thinking. Had Sarah Fletcher trapped Cole Sutherland? "If you will excuse me," Sarah managed, her voice barely above a whisper. She fled to the back room, fighting tears. She could hear Victoria's voice continuing in the store, sweet and poisonous, planting seeds of doubt. By evening, the story would be all over town. By tomorrow, everyone would be whispering about it. And Cole would hear it too. What if he believed it? What if Victoria's lies made him doubt her? Sarah had never been good at defending herself, at fighting back. She had always just accepted whatever people said about her, let them think what they wanted. But this was different. This could destroy everything. When Cole came that evening, Sarah could tell he had heard the rumors. His expression was troubled, and he was quieter than usual. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said after supper, leading her out to the porch. Sarah's heart sank. This was it. He was going to call off the wedding. She tried to speak, to defend herself, but the words would not come. "I heard what Victoria said today," Cole continued. "The whole town is talking about it. People are saying you manipulated me, that you threw yourself at me, that I am being foolish." "It is not true," Sarah finally managed. "None of it is true. I would never." "I know," Cole said simply. Sarah blinked. "You know, of course I know." "Sarah, do you really think I would believe such nonsense? I was there. I know exactly what happened. You saved that child without a thought for yourself. You did not even notice me until after it was over, and you have never thrown yourself at me." If anything, you have been cautious, hesitant, like you cannot quite believe I could love you. But Victoria, she told everyone. Victoria is a liar and a manipulator. Everyone who knows you will realize that. Cole took her hands. But I will admit, her lies have forced me to think about something. Sarah, I know we plan to wait 2 more weeks to get married, but I do not want to wait any more. I do not want to give Victoria or anyone else more time to spread lies and cause trouble. Let us get married now. Tomorrow, if possible. Tomorrow, Sarah's head spun. But the dress is not finished and we do not have the house ready and the dress is beautiful as it is. The house has 4 walls and a roof. That is enough to start with. Sarah, I love you. I want you to be my wife. I do not want to wait another day. Do you? Sarah thought about the gossip, about Victoria's smug face, about the doubt in people's eyes. And then she thought about Cole, steady and true, believing in her when no one else did. No, she said firmly. I do not want to wait either. Let us get married tomorrow. Cole grinned and pulled her into a fierce hug. That is my girl. We will show this town that nothing and no one can come between us. They went inside to tell Thomas, who was surprised but supportive. If that is what you both want, then you have my blessing. I will make the arrangements with Reverend Mills first thing in the morning. Victoria, when she heard the news, was livid. You cannot do this. I will not allow it. You have no say in the matter, Thomas told her firmly. You have done enough damage. From now on, you will keep your mouth shut about your sister and Cole, or you will find yourself looking for somewhere else to live. You would throw me out, for her. I would hold you accountable for your actions. You are an adult, Victoria. It is time you started acting like one. The wedding was arranged for noon the next day. It would be small and simple, just immediate family and a few close friends. Sarah spent the morning finishing her dress, her hands shaking with nerves and excitement. Mrs. Chen helped her get ready, braiding her hair and pinning it up with small white flowers. When Sarah looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks flushed, and for once she did not see plainness. She saw a woman in love, about to marry the man of her dreams. The ceremony was held in the church, with Reverend Mills officiating. William and James Sutherland stood with Cole, while Mrs. Chen and another friend stood with Sarah. Thomas walked her down the aisle, tears in his eyes. Your mother would be so proud, he whispered as he placed her hand in Cole's. Victoria did not attend. She had locked herself in her room and refused to come out, even when Thomas knocked and pleaded. But Sarah found she did not care. This day was about her and Cole, about the life they were beginning together. Victoria could not touch that. Do you, Cole Sutherland, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? Reverend Mills asked. I do, Cole said, his voice strong and clear. And do you, Sarah Fletcher, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, Sarah breathed. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Cole kissed her tenderly, and the small gathering burst into applause. They were married. Sarah was now Sarah Sutherland, wife of the man she loved, and no amount of gossip or jealousy could change that. The reception was held at the Sutherland Ranch, a simple affair with food and music and dancing. Sarah danced with Cole, with her father, with James, feeling lighter and happier than she had ever felt in her life. As the sun began to set, Cole took her hand. Are you ready to see your new home, Mrs. Sutherland? Sarah smiled at the sound of her new name. I am ready. They rode out to the house Cole had built, arriving just as twilight painted the sky purple and gold. Cole lifted her down from her horse and then, to her surprise, swept her up in his arms. I believe this is tradition, he said with a grin, carrying her across the threshold. The house was small but cozy, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, a bedroom, and a small loft that could eventually be used for children. Cole had furnished it simply but well, with a bed, a table and chairs, and even a bookshelf that he had built himself. "For your books," he explained, "I want you to have space for all your stories and dreams." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "It is perfect. You are perfect." "I am far from perfect," Cole said, setting her down gently, "but I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the husband you deserve. I will work hard to provide for you and our children. I will protect you and support you and love you no matter what. This I promise." "And I promise to be a good wife to you," Sarah said, "to work beside you, to support you, to love you with everything I have. I may not be beautiful like Victoria, but I will be faithful and true." Cole cupped her face in his hands. "Sarah, listen to me. You are beautiful, not in the way Victoria is beautiful, like a painting or a statue. You are beautiful like sunrise over the mountains, like a flower that blooms in the desert, like everything that is real and true and worth treasuring. True beauty shines from within your heart, and your heart is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Sarah felt the last of her doubts melt away. Cole loved her. He had chosen her. And together they would build a life that was rich and full, regardless of what anyone else thought. That night, as they lay together in their new bed, Cole told her stories about the ranch, about his dreams for their future. Sarah listened, her head on his chest, and felt completely at peace. She had found her place in the world, her person. Everything else was just noise. Life on the ranch was harder than Sarah had anticipated, but more rewarding too. She learned to cook proper meals over the wood stove, to mend clothes and make do with what they had, to help with the ranch work when extra hands were needed. Cole was patient with her mistakes and generous with his praise. He made her feel capable and valued. They developed a routine. Cole would rise before dawn to work with the cattle and horses, and Sarah would prepare breakfast. She spent her days maintaining the house, helping William with the ranch accounts. Her experience keeping books for her father proved invaluable, and tending a small garden she had started. In the evenings, she and Cole would sit together, reading or talking, sometimes just enjoying the comfortable silence of being near each other. Sarah visited her father in town once a week, helping in the store and catching up on news. Thomas always had stories to share, and he seemed happier than he had been in years. Victoria, however, remained a problem. She had not forgiven Sarah and made no secret of her bitterness. "She barely leaves her room," Thomas confided during one visit. "She refuses to help in the store or do anything useful. She just sits and stares out the window. I am at my wit's end." "Perhaps she needs time," Sarah suggested, though she felt little sympathy for her sister. "It has been 3 months. At some point she needs to accept reality and move forward." But Victoria had other plans. She began spreading more rumors, this time claiming that Cole was unhappy in his marriage, that he came into town looking for her, that the marriage was a sham. The rumors were ridiculous and easily disproven, but they still stung. Cole dealt with it by making very public displays of affection whenever they came to town together. He would kiss Sarah on the street, hold her hand, call her endearing names where everyone could hear. It scandalized some of the more proper citizens, but effectively silenced the rumors. "Let them talk," Cole would say. "They are just jealous that I have what they want, a real, honest love." 4 months after their wedding, Sarah realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She told Cole that evening after supper, nervous about his reaction. "A baby." Cole's face went through several expressions: shock, wonder, and finally pure joy. "Sarah, we are going to have a baby. In about 6 months, I think. Are you happy?" "Happy, I am thrilled." He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down carefully. "Should I be doing that? Will it hurt the baby? What do you need? Should you be sitting down?" Sarah laughed at his sudden concern. "I am pregnant, not fragile, but yes, I should probably start taking things a bit easier." Cole became almost comically protective. He barely let Sarah do any work, insisting she rest and eat well. William teased him mercilessly about it, but Sarah could see the older man was pleased at the prospect of a grandchild. When Sarah went to town to tell her father the news, she found him in the store arguing with Victoria. "I will not be shut up in this house like a prisoner," Victoria was saying. "I want to go to San Francisco. There are opportunities there, people who will appreciate me." "And how will you support yourself?" Thomas demanded. "You have no skills, no training." "I will marry someone rich, someone who appreciates real beauty." "Victoria, that is not a plan, that is a fantasy." They both fell silent when they saw Sarah. Victoria's expression hardened, but then her gaze dropped to Sarah's belly and something flickered in her eyes. "You are pregnant," Victoria said flatly. "I am. We are very happy about it." "Of course you are. You get everything you want now, do not you? The husband, the ranch, the baby. While I am stuck here, invisible and forgotten." "You are not invisible," Sarah said wearily. "You are just reaping what you sowed. You could have been happy for me, could have found your own happiness, but you chose bitterness instead. Easy for you to say, you won." "This was not a competition, Victoria. It never was. Cole was not a prize to be won. He was a person who made his own choice. You need to accept that and move on with your life." "Never," Victoria spat. "I will never accept that he chose you over me. It makes no sense. It is not fair." "Life is not fair," Thomas interjected. "But we deal with what we are given. Victoria, if you want to go to San Francisco, then go. I will give you enough money to get started, but do not expect me to fund your life indefinitely. You need to grow up and take responsibility for yourself." Victoria stared at her father, shocked. "You would send me away." "I would give you the opportunity to make your own way. What you do with it is up to you." In the end, Victoria did go to San Francisco. She left a week later with a trunk full of her belongings and a purse full of money from their father. She did not say goodbye to Sarah. "You think she will be all right?" Sarah asked Cole that evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "Honestly, I do not know. She has the looks to attract men, but without any substance to keep them, she may struggle." "But that is not your responsibility, Sarah. You cannot save someone who does not want to be saved." "I know. It is just sad. She could have been so much more than what she chose to be." "Some people cannot see past their own reflection long enough to build real character. Victoria is one of them." Cole put his arm around her, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. "Let us focus on our family, on the life we are building. That is what matters." The months passed peacefully. Sarah's belly grew round, and she felt the baby move inside her, a constant reminder of the miracle growing within. Cole talked to her belly every night, telling the baby stories about the ranch, about the horses and cattle, about the life that awaited. In February 1877, on a cold but clear winter day, Sarah went into labor. It was long and difficult, but Cole stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and encouraging her. When the baby finally emerged, tiny and perfect and screaming, Sarah wept with relief and joy. "It is a boy," the midwife announced, placing the baby in Sarah's arms. "A healthy, strong boy." Cole looked down at his son with wonder in his eyes. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I love you both so much." They named him Thomas William Sutherland after both his grandfathers. Little Tommy, as they called him, had Cole's blue-gray eyes and a shock of dark hair. He was beautiful and demanding, keeping them awake with his crying and filling their days with endless tasks of feeding and changing and soothing. Sarah had never been happier. The work was exhausting, but every time she looked at Tommy, every time Cole held their son with such tenderness, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life she had been given. Thomas Fletcher came to visit often, doting on his grandson with unabashed joy. He brought news from town, including occasional updates about Victoria. She had written a few times, short letters that made it clear she had found some success in San Francisco. She was working as a hostess in a fancy restaurant, using her beauty to charm wealthy patrons. She met a man, Thomas said during one visit when Tommy was about 6 months old. Someone rich, apparently. She seems to think she will marry him. I hope she finds happiness, Sarah said, and she meant it. Despite everything, Victoria was still her sister. But a year later, another letter arrived, this one desperate and rambling. The rich man had turned out to be married. He had been using Victoria for his own amusement and had discarded her when he grew bored. She had lost her job at the restaurant, had no money, and was living in a boarding house in a rough part of the city. She is asking for money, Thomas said, his face troubled. Begging, really? Will you send it? Sarah asked. I do not know. Part of me wants to let her face the consequences of her choices, but she is still my daughter. In the end, Thomas sent enough money for Victoria to come home if she wanted to, but he received no response. Weeks turned into months with no word. Finally, a letter arrived from a woman named Clara Morrison, who ran the boarding house where Victoria had been staying. Victoria had died of pneumonia, the letter said. She had been ill for weeks, but had refused to see a doctor, perhaps because she had no money to pay one. She had died alone in her room, and her few belongings had been sold to pay for her burial. Sarah cried when she heard the news, grieved for the sister who had been so beautiful, so full of potential, but who had wasted it all on jealousy and pride. She cried for the relationship they had never had, for the sister Victoria could have been if she had only chosen differently. Cole held her as she wept, understanding that some griefs cannot be explained or reasoned away. She was family, he said simply. You are allowed to mourn her. They held a memorial service in Virginia City, though few people attended. Victoria had burned too many bridges, hurt too many people with her spite and gossip. But Sarah spoke at the service, remembering the few good times they had shared as children, before beauty and jealousy had twisted Victoria into someone unrecognizable. She was my sister, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her tears. And I pray she has found peace now that she could not find in life. After Victoria's death, life seemed to settle into a new rhythm. Sarah and Cole focused on their growing family, on the ranch, on building the life they had dreamed of. Tommy grew from a baby into a rambunctious toddler, full of energy and curiosity. When Tommy was 3, Sarah became pregnant again. This time she carried twins, a boy and a girl. The pregnancy was harder than the first, and the birth was long and frightening. But in the end, both babies were healthy. They named the boy James after Cole's brother and the girl Margaret after Sarah's late mother. With 3 children under the age of 4, life became chaotic. Sarah often fell into bed exhausted, wondering how she would survive another day. But Cole was a devoted father, helping with the children whenever he could, and the extended Sutherland family pitched in as well. The years passed in a blur of diapers and first steps, of scraped knees and bedtime stories. The children grew, and Sarah watched with amazement as they developed their own personalities. Tommy was serious and studious like his grandfather Thomas. James was wild and adventurous, always getting into trouble. And Margaret, sweet Maggie, had her father's kind heart and her mother's love of stories. When Sarah turned 30, she looked back on her life with contentment. She had a husband who loved her deeply, 3 healthy children, a home and a purpose. She had never become beautiful like Victoria, had never turned heads when she walked down the street. But she had something far more valuable, a life filled with real love, real joy, real meaning. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset while the children played in the yard, Cole took her hand. "You remember what I said to you all those years ago," he asked, "about true beauty? You said it shines from within the heart." "I did. And I meant it then, and I mean it even more now. You are more beautiful to me today than you were the day we met. Every year we spend together, every challenge we face, every joy we share, it adds to your beauty. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever known, Sarah Sutherland, and I thank God every day that I was wise enough to see it." Sarah leaned against his shoulder, watching their children play in the golden light of evening. Tommy was teaching James how to whittle, though the younger boy kept getting distracted. Maggie was picking flowers, making a bouquet to put on the dinner table. This was her life, these people were her world, and it was more than she had ever dreamed possible. "I love you," she said simply. "And I love you, always have, always will." As the years continued to pass, the Sutherland family grew and prospered. The ranch expanded, became one of the most successful in Nevada. Tommy eventually took over managing the cattle operation, proving to have a head for business as well as a strong work ethic. James became a horse breeder, developing a line of sturdy, intelligent horses that were in high demand throughout the West. And Maggie, to everyone's delight, became a teacher, educating the children of Virginia City and surrounding areas. All three children married well, not in the sense of wealth or status, but in finding partners who truly loved them. They gave Sarah and Cole a dozen grandchildren, who filled their later years with noise and laughter and chaos. Sarah never did write the story she had once dreamed of, but she did not regret it. Her life had been her story, far more interesting and fulfilling than anything she could have imagined. She had lived through the wild days of the Old West, had helped build a family and a legacy, had known love in its truest, deepest form. When Cole died at the age of 76, peacefully in his sleep with Sarah beside him, she grieved deeply, but without regret. They had been married for 51 years, had built a life together that was rich and full and meaningful. She had been chosen, not for her beauty but for her heart, and that choice had made all the difference. Sarah lived another 5 years after Cole's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She spent her days in the rocking chair on the porch of the house Cole had built for her, watching the desert landscape she had come to love, remembering. She thought often of Victoria, of the different paths they had taken. Victoria had believed that beauty was everything, that it could open any door and solve any problem. But beauty had not saved her. It had not brought her love or happiness or peace. In the end, it had been nothing but a mask, hiding an emptiness that Victoria had never been able to fill. Sarah, who had never been beautiful in the conventional sense, had found everything her sister had sought. And she had found it because Cole had been wise enough to look past the surface, to see the person beneath. He had seen her heart, and he had chosen it. On a warm spring morning in 1928, Sarah Fletcher Sutherland passed away quietly in her sleep, 76 years old and surrounded by the family she had built. Her children held her hands as she slipped away, and they spoke of how much she was loved, how much she would be missed. At her funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives she had touched. Former students of Maggie's who remembered Mrs. Sutherland bringing books and cookies to the schoolhouse. Ranch hands who remembered her kindness during hard times. Neighbors who remembered her generosity and compassion. People who had known her not as plain or beautiful, but simply as good. Tommy stood at the pulpit and told the story of how his parents had met, how his father had chosen his mother over her beautiful sister, because he had seen something more important than physical beauty. "My father used to say that true beauty shines from within the heart," Tommy said, his voice thick with emotion. "And my mother's heart was the most beautiful thing any of us ever had the privilege to witness. She loved deeply, gave generously, and lived fully. She was not famous or wealthy or conventionally beautiful, but she was everything that mattered, and we were blessed beyond measure to have her in our lives." They buried Sarah next to Cole on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstone was simple. Sarah Fletcher Sutherland, 1851–1928, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, true beauty shines from within. As the mourners dispersed, Tommy and his siblings stood together, looking out over the land their parents had worked so hard to build. The ranch stretched out before them, green and prosperous, a legacy of love and hard work. "You think she was happy?" James asked quietly. "Do you think she ever regretted not being beautiful like Aunt Victoria?" "She was beautiful," Maggie said firmly. "Maybe not in the way the world measures beauty, but in the ways that actually matter. And yes, I think she was happy. Happier than Aunt Victoria ever was." "Father knew what he was doing when he chose her," Tommy said. "He saw past the surface to the substance beneath. That is what real love is." They stood in silence for a moment, honoring the woman who had given them life and love and a foundation to build their own lives upon. Then, as the sun began to set, casting golden light across the Nevada desert, they returned to their families, carrying with them the legacy of Sarah Sutherland. That true beauty, true worth, comes not from what you look like, but from who you are. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the Sutherland family. And with it passed the story of Cole and Sarah, the cowboy who chose the plain girl over her beautiful sister because he understood what really mattered. It became a family legend, a reminder to each new generation that the things the world values, beauty, wealth, status, are fleeting and empty compared to the things that last. Love, character, integrity, kindness. In Virginia City, which eventually became a ghost town as the silver ran out and people moved away, the church where Cole and Sarah were married still stands. Tourists sometimes visit, reading the historical markers about the boom times, the miners, the fortunes made and lost. But if you walk to the small cemetery on the hill behind the old church, you can still find two simple headstones side by side. The inscriptions have weathered over the decades, but the words can still be made out. And sometimes, if you are lucky, you will find wildflowers placed on the graves, left by descendants who still remember the story, who still tell it to their children. The story of how a cowboy in the Old West looked past beauty to see something far more precious. How he chose substance over surface, heart over appearance, and built a life that lasted long after the silver mines played out and the boomtown faded away. The story of how true beauty really does shine from within the heart, and how recognizing that truth can change everything.